Now, finally, the U.S., which usually promotes itself as a defender of free press, seems to be having a running battle with its own press, which President Trump has largely dubbed the fake media. What do you think could be responsible for this decline?
I think if you're talking about Trump and the fake news, what are you talking about? Hello?
I can hear you.
I think when you're talking about the U.S. and
Yes.
the fake media or the Trump keep trumpeting.
I'm talking about the U.S. president's battle with the media.
President Trump battle with the media in America.
Yes, in America, yes.
Okay, that's politics. That's politics. It's obvious what is going on. Trump is trying to use that as something of distraction from all the attention that is being paid to the way he got elected and the kind of assistance that he got, and a few untoward things that he's been alleged to have done. So I think it's convenient for him at this time to call them fake media. But in America generally, you know that the media is partisan. So you have Fox News on the extreme right, and then you have others on the other side, like CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, taking the other side of it. So I don't see, I think it's politics really. It's politics, and it's the Trump way and the usual way really of doing things that we are beginning to witness.
Veteran journalist Mr. Osaze Iyamu, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa. In the spirit of Press Freedom Day, Ethiopian journalist and activist Eskender Nega says his country's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed should work towards promoting democracy and expanding political freedom in the country, as promised by lifting a state of emergency. Mr. Eskender is among hundreds of prisoners released this year as part of reforms announced by the government to reduce tension in the Horn of Africa, which has been hit by unrest since 2015.
Eskender Nega was arrested in 2011 and convicted under anti-terrorism laws for articles criticizing what he called politically motivated prosecutions at a time of a broader campaign for democratic freedoms in a country of 100 million. He says Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed should fulfill his pledge to expand political freedoms by lifting the state of emergency. Mr. Eskender was pardoned one day before former Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn resigned on February the 15th after 6 years in jail.
People were demanding it, and they wanted to, the people had to have their way, and it had to give in. And our time in prison, this is prison term served in an African prison, perhaps one of the worst prisons in Africa. But ultimately the aim was not only to imprison, to imprison you physically, but the aim was to break your spirit. So this was, 6.5 years of hard time. But finally, thanks to God and thanks to the people, we were let go.
The choice of 41-year-old Abiy Ahmed as premier by the coalition that has ruled Ethiopia since 1991 has raised expectations of greater freedom, but Eskender says he will be judged by his actions.
What the people want is a system, like they have in India and in South Africa and Botswana. Does the new Prime Minister want this system? Does he want to bring, the genuine democracy to the country? He has said so. But in the final analysis, he'll be measured not by what he says, but he'll be measured by what he does. So he has to walk the talk, and he hasn't done that up to now. At least he should have lifted the state of emergency by now. He hasn't done that. But still, even if he has failed to do that, he still, deserves the benefit of the doubt.
Well, I hope he gives us the same advice in Ethiopia.
Eskender believes he would soon return to Ethiopia to resume his work as a journalist and continue the struggle for democracy.
This cases, this troubles and these problems that journalists are facing, not only in Ethiopia but in the region, in many African countries, is there because there's no democracy. Where there's democracy, there's the right environment for journalism, for freedom of expression. So, so there's no specific difficulty or problem attached to freedom of expression. If what there is absence of democracy. So where freedom of expression has suffered, that means that democracy is suffering. That there's deficits of democracy. So we have to approach the problem of freedom of expression from a democratic point of view. So if we want freedom of expression, we have to fight for democracy. We have to ensure democracy. That's a precondition.
Security forces killed hundreds of people who campaigned for democratic freedoms between 2015 and 2017, and more than 26,000 were arrested over the same period, though most were released, having spent a few weeks in detention. The government has this year released thousands of prisoners, including dissidents and journalists, in a bid to calm discontent.
In East Africa, influential Roman Catholic bishops in Burundi have denounced a planned referendum on whether to amend the constitution to allow President Pierre Nkurunziza to stand for 2 more terms. The 10 bishops say it is not the right time to vote on what they describe as profound constitutional changes. The clerics allege that Burundians fear to speak their mind because the authorities threaten them with intimidation and reprisals. President Nkurunziza has ruled the Central African nation since 2005, and if the amendment is approved on the 17th of May referendum, he will be entitled to stand for 2 more 7-year terms from 2020. Still to come on the program, Senegalese artist Badara Sars showcases immigration and cultural identity in a rare piece of art. Please stay with us.